Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Victor did not kill Matt. Nick suspects that Matt got away. Victor Newman would do what Nick Newman wanted him to do. He did not do it, and Matt Clark is still alive. The Newman family might have to deal with Matt Clark. If Nick Newman got what he wanted, then Matt Clark would not be a problem for the Newman family anymore. If Victor Newman had killed Matt Clark, then Nick Newman could have gotten into trouble with the law. The people who watch this show are very happy that the actor who plays Victor Newman and also the other actors like Howarth are still on the show and doing a job. He has been an addition to the show as the new person playing a character that people who have been watching for a long time first saw decades ago. Once Upon a Soapy Time in Genoa City, Wisconsin is a show the people who have been watching for a time remember, and the new people who have seen the old parts know Sharon Newman was Matt's girlfriend at first. Matt attacked Sharon Newman, which made Nick defend Sharon Newman, the woman who would eventually become Nick's wife and the mother of two of Nick's children. The thing that happened before led to the story about Cassie Newman that people still like to remember. This is where Sharon found her baby that she had given away to someone to take care of. Sharon and Nick took care of the baby together in the cottage on the Newman Ranch, which is where Sharon lives now. People who watch the show today probably think about the days in the 1990s and remember them fondly. The Cassie Newman storyline is what makes the current story so interesting. The memories of the 1990s are special to the fans of the show now. The Cassie Newman storyline is what people think of when they talk about the old days. Victor Newman made the choice. When the audience saw them, Victor Newman was punching the bag, just like he used to do with Nick Newman when Nick Newman was younger. There were flashback scenes that showed Joshua Morrow and Eric Braeden in the 1990s when Nick Newman was suddenly older and in school. Then the scene jumped to the day, and Victor Newman took off his gloves, opened a closet door, and Matt was inside. Matt's hands were not tied up. Victor Newman told Matt to get up. Victor Newman was in charge. Matt had to do what Victor Newman said. The people who were watching did not know what happened next. They thought that a fight probably occurred. After that fight, Victor took Matt to the police. Now Matt is waiting for the law to decide what to do with him. Will Nick Newman's worst fears come true? Matt is very good at getting out of trouble. He has gotten away from the police times and has never been put in prison for a long time. The law system is not perfect, and sometimes people who have done things can get away with it because of small mistakes in the law or because some people are corrupt. This is why Nick Newman wants to take care of Matt himself, because Matt has been causing him problems for a time. Viewers should anticipate some jailhouse scenes, potentially a court case, and the possibility that Matt does, in fact, escape. Another showdown scene with Sharon would seem to be in order, though Sienna Bacall is also standing in the reprisal line with her. It would seem fitting if Sharon, representing Matt's past, and Sienna, having currency, combined to deliver a final farewell either in the courtroom or elsewhere. Victor Newman, Matt's so-called death, and Nick's growing sense that the truth has been buried under layers of fear, power, and carefully controlled lies, as whispers ripple through the Newman Ranch and beyond that Victor Newman, the man everyone assumes is capable of anything, may not have killed Matt after all, and worse, or maybe far more dangerous, Matt may still be alive, lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting, and plotting his next move, because the story that was neatly wrapped up as a closed case suddenly feels anything but closed, and Nick Newman is the first to feel that chill crawl up his spine when a series of small, almost insignificant details refuse to line up the way they should, starting with the inconsistencies in Victor's behavior after Matt died. Because Victor, for all his ruthlessness, has tells, and Nick knows them better than anyone. Having spent his entire life watching his father dominate enemies, crush rivals, and erase threats with cold precision, yet. This time Victor didn't look victorious. He looked unsettled, distracted, and oddly restrained, as if he were guarding a secret that wasn't quite what everyone assumed, and Nick can't shake the feeling that his father's silence isn't the silence of a man who got away with murder, but the silence of a man who knows something far more complicated, something that could blow up the entire Newman family if it ever came to light. Because Matt was no ordinary enemy. He was volatile, manipulative, and deeply obsessed with power, and if he escaped instead of dying, then every person who breathed a sigh of relief is actually in more danger than ever, and Nick's suspicions only deepen when he starts replaying the timeline in his head, remembering how quickly the official narrative formed, how conveniently the evidence pointed toward Victor, and how fast certain people were pressured to stop asking questions, which feels less like justice and more like a cover designed to keep the peace. But peace built on a lie never lasts in Genoa City, especially when secrets have a way of crawling back into the light at the worst possible moment. And as Nick digs deeper, quietly, cautiously, because accusing Victor outright would set off a war, he begins to notice signs that Matt's presence hasn't vanished at all, including strange financial movements traced through shell companies that feel eerily familiar, anonymous threats that carry Matt's distinctive psychological fingerprints, and a growing sense of paranoia among those who once crossed Matt and believed him gone, because fear doesn't behave this way when the threat is truly dead, and Nick starts connecting dots that no one else wants to see, wondering if Victor, instead of killing Matt, made a calculated choice to let him disappear, perhaps believing that exile was safer than execution, or perhaps striking a secret deal that went sideways, because Victor Newman is nothing if not a strategist, and killing someone like Matt could have triggered consequences even Victor couldn't fully control, whereas letting him escape under the radar might have seemed like the lesser evil at the time. But if that's true, then Victor may have underestimated Matt's hunger for revenge, and Nick can't ignore the gnawing thought that his father's legendary confidence has been replaced by vigilance. Not the vigilance of a hunter, but of a man bracing for impact, as if he knows Matt could resurface at any moment, and this puts Nick in an impossible position, torn between loyalty to his father and his responsibility to protect the rest of the family, because if Matt is alive, then Nikki, Victoria, Adam, and even Nick himself could be pawns in a much darker game, and Nick's internal conflict becomes more intense when he remembers Victor's past, all the times Victor claimed to be acting for the family, while making choices that nearly destroyed them, and Nick wonders if this is another one of those moments, a choice Victor made alone, convinced he could control the outcome, only to create a monster that refuses to stay buried. And as Nick starts quietly questioning people connected to the original incident, law enforcement, security personnel, even old enemies, he encounters nervous glances, half-truths, and sudden changes of subject, the kind of reactions that scream unfinished business, because too many people are afraid of what might happen if the truth comes out, and that fear feels current, alive, not like the echo of a past crime, and Nick's suspicions explode into near certainty when a source he trusts hints that the body identified as Matt's was never conclusively verified, that crucial forensic steps were rushed or skipped, and that certain documents were sealed under pressure from powerful forces. And while everyone assumes those forces came from Victor to cover up a murder, Nick starts to suspect the opposite, that Victor pushed to seal the case, not to hide guilt, but to prevent panic, to stop the chaos that would erupt if people knew Matt was still out there, because admitting that an enemy escaped is sometimes more dangerous than being accused of killing him, and this theory haunts Nick as he confronts Victor in subtle ways, testing him, watching his reactions, dropping hints to see if his father flinches, and Victor's responses are carefully measured, deflective, but not defensive, which only fuels Nick's belief that there's a deeper truth Victor isn't ready to share, not because he doesn't trust Nick, but because he fears what Nick might do with that knowledge, because Nick is not like Victor. He doesn't believe every threat should be met with domination and silence, and Victor may worry that Nick's sense of morality could unravel a fragile balance that's keeping Matt at bay, and as the tension builds, Nick begins to feel watched, followed, as if someone knows he's getting close, and anonymous messages begin appearing, cryptic warnings that feel less like intimidation and more like taunts, the kind Matt used to enjoy, which sends chills down Nick's spine and confirms his worst fears, because this isn't just about proving Victor innocent or guilty anymore, it's about survival, and the question shifts from, did Victor kill Matt, to what happens when Matt decides it's time to come back, and the implications are terrifying, because Matt knows the Newman family's weaknesses, their history, their fractures, and if he's been hiding all this time, he's had years to plan, to study, to build resources, and Nick realizes that Matt's escape could be the ultimate long game, a punishment worse than death for Victor Newman, forcing him to live with the constant knowledge that his enemy is still breathing, still dangerous, and still capable of destroying everything Victor holds dear. And this revelation could fracture the Newman family in ways they may not recover from. because if the truth comes out, Nikki will demand answers, Victoria will question Victor's judgment, Adam will see opportunity in chaos, and Nick will be forced to choose between exposing the truth and maintaining a lie that's protecting them for now, and the stakes skyrocket when Nick starts to believe that Matt's return might not be loud or immediate, but subtle and surgical, targeting the family emotionally before striking financially or physically. Because Matt has always preferred psychological warfare, and Nick fears that the first sign of Matt's survival won't be a dramatic reveal but a devastating loss that no one sees coming. And as Nick pieces all of this together, he begins to understand why Victor has been so uncharacteristically quiet, why he hasn't gloated, why he hasn't denied the accusations with his usual fire. Because a man who believes an enemy is truly dead sleeps easier than Victor has been sleeping, and Victor hasn't slept in peace since the day Matt disappeared. And this haunting possibility sets the stage for a massive confrontation, because Nick can't keep this to himself forever, and the closer he gets to confirming Matt's survival, the more dangerous it becomes for everyone involved, leading to the chilling realization that Victor Newman may not be the villain in this story, but the reluctant guardian of a truth so explosive it could shatter Genoa City, because if Matt is alive, then the nightmare everyone thought was over is just beginning, and the question looming over YNR is no longer about what Victor did in the past, but about what the Newmans will do when the ghost they buried steps back into the light, proving that in Genoa City, no secret stays dead forever. And sometimes the most terrifying spoiler of all is that the worst threat isn't the one you think you defeated, but the one that escaped and learned how to wait. Picking up where the shock leaves off, the tension in Genoa City only tightens as Nick's quiet investigation begins to ripple outward, because secrets this big never stay contained for long, especially when the Newman family is involved, and the more Nick observes Victor, the more he realizes that his father is operating on a completely different level than everyone else, moving pieces on a chessboard no one else can even see. Because Victor isn't reacting like a man afraid of exposure, he's reacting like a man bracing for an inevitable collision, and that realization alone changes everything for Nick, who starts to understand that if Matt truly escaped, then Victor may have spent every day since preparing for a war that hasn't officially begun, stockpiling leverage, strengthening alliances, and quietly neutralizing threats before they even form, all while allowing the world to believe he committed murder. Because being feared for killing Matt might actually be safer than being pitted, or worse, challenged for letting him live, and Nick can't ignore how twisted that logic is, yet disturbingly effective, because as long as people think Matt is dead, they underestimate the danger, and underestimation has always been Victor's greatest weapon and greatest flaw, since it relies on absolute control, something even Victor Newman can't guarantee forever, especially when a wild card like Matt is involved. And as Nick digs deeper, he stumbles upon a series of old Newman Enterprises security reports that never quite added up, reports that reference external threats neutralized without names, timestamps that don't match public records, and one chilling notation about containment failure that was later amended and buried under layers of corporate bureaucracy. And Nick realizes this may be the smoking gun, not proof of murder, but proof of escape. And this discovery forces Nick into a moral spiral, because if Victor allowed Matt to slip away, intentionally or not, then every lie that followed was built on the belief that Victor alone could handle the consequences, and Nick knows all too well how that belief has hurt their family before, from Adam's endless battles for approval to Victoria's hardened distrust, to Nikki's constant struggle between loving Victor and fearing what he's capable of. And Nick begins to wonder if Matt's survival is the final test of whether Victor's way of doing things still works in a world where secrets spread faster than ever, and the pressure intensifies when Victoria starts asking questions of her own, sensing something is off, because Victoria has inherited Victor's instincts without his blind spots, and she notices the subtle shifts in Newman Enterprises' security posture, the sudden reallocation of resources, the quiet hiring of specialists whose resumes scream crisis management, and while Victor claims it's all precaution, Victoria suspects it's preparation, and her suspicions put Nick in a bind, because he doesn't know how much to tell her without detonating the fragile balance Victor is desperately maintaining, and meanwhile Nikki begins to feel the emotional weight of it all, haunted by nightmares she can't explain, flashes of Matt's face appearing in her thoughts despite believing him dead, and Nikki's intuition has always been unsettlingly accurate, which makes Nick fear that the truth is already seeping into the family's subconscious, whether Victor wants it to or not. And as if that weren't enough, Adam lurks on the periphery, sensing opportunity, because chaos has always been Adam's ladder, and the idea that Victor might not be the ruthless executioner everyone believes intrigues him, since it exposes a vulnerability Adam could exploit, either to undermine Victor's legacy or to position himself as the one willing to do what Victor couldn't. And Nick worries that if Adam learns Matt might be alive, he won't see danger, he'll see leverage, and that thought alone makes Nick realize time is running out, because the longer this secret festers, the more explosive its fallout will be, and the tension finally reaches a boiling point when Nick receives undeniable proof that someone using Matt's old encryption methods has accessed a dormant Newman offshore account, not draining it, not flagging it, just touching it enough to say, "I'm still here." And that message hits Nick like a punch to the gut, because it's not just confirmation of Matt's survival, it's a declaration of intent, and Nick knows this is exactly the kind of psychological move Matt would make, reminding Victor, and now Nick, that he controls the timing, and this forces Nick into a direct confrontation with Victor, not the cautious probing he's been doing, but a raw, emotional showdown, because Nick can't carry this alone anymore, and when he finally corners Victor, the air between them crackles with years of unresolved resentment, loyalty, and fear, and Victor doesn't deny it, not outright, but he doesn't confess either, instead admitting something far more terrifying, that Matt's disappearance was never as final as everyone believed, and that Victor made a choice in a moment of chaos, a choice he believed would protect his family in the long run, but one that chained him to a future he's been trying to outmaneuver ever since. And Nick is stunned, not just by the admission, but by the exhaustion in Victor's voice, because for the first time, Nick sees his father not as an untouchable titan, but as a man who knows he gambled and may have lost, and Victor warns Nick that exposing this truth won't bring closure. It will invite Matt back into the open, exactly where he wants to be, because Matt thrives on attention, on fear, on control, and Victor's strategy has always been to deny him those things, to keep him in the shadows where his power is limited. But Nick challenges that logic, arguing that secrets rot from the inside, that hiding the truth has already put them all at risk, and that Matt's recent moves prove he's ready to escalate, whether Victor likes it or not, and the argument ends without resolution, because neither man is entirely right or wrong, and that ambiguity is what makes the situation so dangerous. And as word of Nick and Victor's confrontation quietly spreads, cracks form throughout the Newman family, with Victoria demanding transparency, Nikki insisting on honesty, and Adam subtly fanning the flames, because he knows a divided family is easier to manipulate. And just when it seems like things can't get worse, a carefully orchestrated event shakes Genoa City, a public humiliation of a Newman ally, executed with surgical precision, carrying all the hallmarks of Matt's style, and the message is clear. The game has begun, and hiding is no longer an option, and Nick realizes that Matt's survival isn't just a twist in the story. It's the catalyst for a reckoning that will force every Newman to confront who they are, what they're willing to sacrifice, and whether Victor's legacy of control can survive in a world where the truth refuses to stay buried, because Matt didn't just escape death, he escaped Victor's rules, and that may be the most dangerous spoiler of all, setting the stage for betrayals, alliances, and shocking choices that will redefine the young and the restless forever, as Genoa City braces for the return of a ghost who is never really gone, proving once again that in this town, survival isn't about who wins the fight, but who lives long enough to tell the story.